Hey! So this is where we stopped in the last video, where we saw certain cases of not a number in the ParseInt function. So in this video, let's see what happens if we have a situation whereby the radix is 0, the radix is undefined or missing. Now if the radix is 0, undefined or missing, number 1, if the string begins with 0 and a small x or 0 and a capital X, the radix will be considered as 16. So maybe if you have something like 0x192, this will automatically make the radix 16. 0x, x stands for hexadecimal. And number 2, if the string begins with 0, the radix will be considered 8 or 10, and this will depend on the implementation of the browser engine. So there are certain browsers that will consider it 8, others will consider it 10 if it begins with 0, and that entirely depends on the browser. But from ES5, ECMAScript 5 implementations, the default will be 10. So even if the number begins with 0, the default will be 10. And then number 3, if a string begins with any other number, any other value, the radix is always 10. That means if it does not begin with 0x or small x, or does not begin with a 0, it will always be considered 10. So if it begins with A, any of the letters from A to Z, or any of the numbers from 1 to 9, in this case, it will always be, the radix will always be considered to be 10. So if I come back here, and let's start with the first one, where we say that if the radix begins with 0x, then the number is considered, the radix here will be considered as 16. So if I come here and I display, you see this is giving us 20. That's because this was given a radix automatically of 16. If we didn't have the 0x and we try to display this, it will give us 14. If you don't put a radix in there and the number begins with 0x, it will be considered as a radix of 16. So you should always put the radix in there. And then the next one we said was that if a number begins with 0, let's say 023. Let's see if we display this one, it returns 23. So you can see in this implementation, in this particular implementation of my browser, we are automatically returned 23. And this means that the radix that is being used is 10. However, in other browsers, it could be different. But in this particular browser that I'm using, the Firefox engine is using 10 as a default. And then if this one starts with any other number, let's say it starts with 9, that, and we display, it will convert this number based on the radix of 10. So I hope you've understood this. I mean, there is no easy example to show this. You only have to understand them the way they are. If a string begins with 0 with a small x, so this is hexadecimal. We're later on going to see something like 0 and O, whereby O stands for octal. So we're going to see that when you look at number literals. That is the next section from this, when we start looking at literals. So in the past few videos, we have looked at the ParseInt function and how you can use it to convert your numbers. You can convert any number, you can convert any string into a number. So if this was our number and we use that and we display, that's what happens. If that was radix of 16, you see it gives us a different number. So always display the radix, even though in certain modern browsers it will be assumed to be 10. As long as the number doesn't begin with 0x, always display it there so that it doesn't confuse the browsers. So that's it for this video. Let's continue in the next video, and in the next video we're going to start looking at the parse float. So I'll see you in that next video. And if you do have any questions, feel free to let me know about them. See you in the next video.